3, 2, 1. Ignition. Welcome to the LocoFoco Netcast. My name is Timothy Virkkala. The sound of a lighting match, you will have learned last week, stands for the LocoFoco. The match had been a new invention in 1830-something, and they were called LocoFocos, for light in motion. And when the Tammany Hall insiders turned off the gas for the lights in Tammany Hall, where they were holding their meetings for the Democratic Party, the individualists struck their new matches, lit candles, and carried on with the meeting and filled the ranks of the Democratic Party with individualists, with libertarians. Yes, once upon a time, Democrats were libertarian. If you want to learn more about that, you should listen to the last podcast, starring Anthony Comegna, and I called it When Democrats Were Libertarian. This week, though, we're going to talk about Dennis Pratt again, whom I called the top libertarian on Quora in episode 3. Well, no sooner was that out than Dennis Pratt was hit by Quora, and then kicked off. And then, well, let's go into the story and the addendum, and we will find something very interesting about our time. Social media is a kind of strange jungle, and the leftists hate libertarians, and they're doing something about it. So now, my second interview with Dennis Pratt, top libertarian on Quora. Well, it's good talking to you again. Are you okay? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm a little bit, at cross purposes. I don't really know what I'm doing and where I'm going. I'm having to make some hard decisions, which I wasn't planning on making, just a week ago. So I'm a little bit surprised and a little bit hurt, and just kind of go, damn, that's surprising.
And the surprise was that you've been suspended from Quora? Is that actually what's going on here? A suspension? What does that mean?
Right, yeah. I have a 14-day suspension, which is, I've never been suspended from Quora before. I've never even been threatened with suspension. And I got, all these reports and notifications that I was violating some policy, which I had no clue what it was. I kept on writing them back saying, what am I doing wrong? I'm not doing anything wrong. And they kept pointing to things that were, like, for example, they kept pointing to links that I had. Like, I had a comment where I would link to something, and they'd point to that, and then the text that they would send me wouldn't be the link that was in that comment. Mm-hmm. It would instead be something really, like calling somebody a fucking asshole. And I go, well, I never said that, And so I would reply that. I actually found out just yesterday what happened, if you're interested at all.
It's hard not to be curious.
I named one of the spaces in Quora Dennis's ebook. And what it gave was a virtual overview of my writing.
Right.
So, and what I did was I chained all of the answers together so that, you read one answer, and then when you're done with that, you click on the next button, and it goes to the next one. Well, the next button is a link that said, to Dennis's ebook. And the Quora bots thought that I was taking the reader off-site to my commercial ebook, trying to sell my ebook. And so they had me up for spam, which I never even conceived that they would have me for spam. But they have me for spam because the word ebook was in there, and they were triggering off of ebook. Now the moderators looked at it, and they didn't look at the link to see that I'm just linking right back into Quora, but they didn't bother to look. I found out through somebody who knows someone, and they were like, yeah, we don't really care. It disturbs the users. The user might think that they're going off site, and so therefore that's a problem. And so,
so have you thought about renaming it?
I actually had renamed it. I renamed it to Dennis's Tour when I think you and I talked. It was at Dennis's Tour. By then I had accumulated so many notifications of ills because I had 90 of these links. And all it is because they don't have a next button, right? Quora doesn't allow you to chain things together. So I was just kind of doing a quick and dirty next button. Um, and but I also get, BNBRs on a regular basis from like these trolls, these brigading trolls that go after libertarians. And so,
what is a BNBR?
be nice, be respectful. So Quora has a rule that one must be nice and be respectful on the site. And I like to think that I'm one of the nicer, more respectful people on Quora. But the especially the leftists use this as kind of a weapon to go after people they disagree with, and they will report them for violating the BNBR rule. And I get those regularly. I always appeal them. About 90% of the time, I'm successful. Every once in a while, I'm unsuccessful. I go, no, you guys are wrong. And every time, and there have been a couple of cases where, I was unsuccessful, and I just kind of go, well, it was a little bit, don't be a victim. My message was actually, don't be a victim. Take responsibility for your life. And given today's climate, I think they could see that as not being respectful to their victimhood.
Well, sure, because their victimhood is the most precious thing they have, and maybe the only thing they have left, because there's nothing much in their arguments. But I've had at least two mine taken down for that very reason.
With the BNBR for where you actually thought that you were being disrespectful, you agreed with them.
Well, who are you supposed to be respectful towards?
Well, you should have. The proximate cause of my removal was this extremely milquetoast post where it was on a gun issue, and a European woman had written me in a different comment. Said, I don't understand the American debate. And I had written this thing, which was like 2 sentences on each side. And it was really, it was very matter of fact, very easy. There wasn't anything slap in your face about it. And she reported me. She reported me for that. And that was actually the proximate cause of my removal, was that specific answer, which had nothing to do with being disrespectful at all.
Right. No, not at all. No, you said that to me, right? And I read that. I thought it was one of the best things I'd seen in a long time. Could you read that right for us right now?
I might be able to.
I remember it being really good, and I think people should get a taste of what is considered disrespectful on Quora.
So the question that was asked was, can you summarize the arguments for and against gun control in 1 or 2 sentences? And so I offered this to this European woman who I thought was sincerely asking me a question about why are you guys so upset about guns in America? So my answer was, for gun control. Bad people attack good people, sometimes with guns. If rulers use their guns to take away the guns from everyone who's not a ruler, then bad people will not be able to attack good people, at least not with guns, at least as long as the bad people obey the ruler's gun laws, and at least as long as the rulers are not themselves the bad guys. And then on the other side, for self-protection, bad people attack good people using a whole bunch of things. The worst bad people are rulers. Good people need guns to protect good people from bad people, regardless of whether the bad people use guns or something else, regardless of whether the bad people obey gun laws, and regardless of whether the bad people are the rulers. And that was the entirety of my message. I don't see a BNBR. I read it to my wife, and she goes, well, you're not particularly nice to the government. And I just kind of laugh and go, well,
yeah.
If that's the rule, then I'm lost here, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and that's just silly. That's the problem, is that I think that the respect rules on a forum like Quora, I want to say a forum like Quorum, but I can't say that. But on a forum like Quora, is that you're respectful to the people you're engaging with. That would be a rule that I can see someone actually paying a good deal of attention to. But to some third party outside of Quora, I mean, people do have opinions, and they don't always need to show respect. I mean, you don't need to respect the people you're arguing against. You could. It might be nice. How much respect does Hitler get on Quora?
Right, right. Well, I'm just really curious that this woman would look at that and that she would decide that I was being disrespectful to her. I thought it was actually just a very calm, forthright. Here's the difference, right? The gun control people want to take away people's guns because they think that they won't be attacked by people with guns that way, and the self-preservation people think that, well, no, I want to protect myself. So I was trying to do it in a short, clever way. I didn't see any disrespect there, and I certainly didn't mean to disrespect her, but somehow she interpreted that as being disrespectful. She sent it into Quora. I think that Quora normally would have sent me a notification, and then I would have appealed it. And about 2 weeks later, I would get out of the report. But they never gave me an option because I had accumulated all these spams, these erroneous spam things that I was sending people to my ebook, which was just their space, their very own space. I was sending them to my ebook, trying to commercialize off of Quora, which I've spent probably somewhere around 1,400 hours on Quora, writing for Quora. And if anything, I haven't received a penny from it. Quora makes money from me writing on it. And so, they commercialize off of me. I've never commercialized off of them. I wasn't commercializing off of them. In fact, I was just keeping them on Quora, having the person kind of continue reading the next one and the next one and the next one. I thought it was really innovative. I actually do a lot of these things where I use their tools to give me functions that they never thought of. They don't actually have. So here, a next button. They don't actually have a next button, but I created a next button. I also had in that space a table of contents that I listed all of all of my answers that I wanted them to look at, and they don't have a function like that. They don't create a table of contents for space.
Right. It's goofy. Yours is great. I mean, if I had time, I probably do, but I'm not going to do it. I would do something similar, right? I mean, can't we go onto a site and see what people have done in there? And we can see what they've done, right? But just not in an organized way. Is that right?
Well, I don't know because I actually list all of my answers that I've written over 3.5 years in a series of table of contents, and it's about 90 pages long of this table leading to this table, and guns would be one topic area, but ethics and consequentialism and government as violence and all these things that would be topics, and then inside each one I list links to my answers on those, and I actually organize them from here are the ones that were really popular, here are the ones that weren't so popular but they're still on target, here are ones that are kind of kind of talk to it, but are popular. And here are the ones that kind of talk about it, but aren't that popular, So, and I tell people that, if you read all of this, you're ready for a PhD, and you can actually start working on your dissertation if you read all of this stuff. But if you're really kind of curious about the libertarian take, just read the first batch. So I've been doing that for 3 years, and they've never really kind of come at me. All that they came at me, this thing was because I had used the word ebook, which they had put into a lexicon for their bot to find and flag, and then the moderator didn't bother to look at the link.
And that is all because obviously some of your enemies want to see you out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not that so much that I disagree with them. I guess I do, but it's that they get very angry. They get very, very angry with my argument, because my argument comes at it from an ethical perspective, and I think that that's probably one of the big reasons why they come at me so much harder than they come at other people. And they do go after other conservatives and other libertarians, but a lot of those guys, frankly, they kind of are nasty. They're mean. They're So the way I classify is we got about 100 libertarians on Quora, We have about 1,000 conservatives on Quora, and we have about 10,000 active leftists on Quora. So it's like an order of magnitude each time. And usually the leftists and the conservatives are fighting, and we little libertarians are kind of hiding out here, unless you're kind of tweaking their nose. And there's two ways of tweaking it: by responding in kind. And so if someone's rude to you and you're rude back to them, and they report you for being rude, Quora doesn't accept as a reasonable defense. Oh well, they were rude first. That's it's whoever reports is the one who gets the BNBR, or that the argument. And I think that this is actually the problem here, because I try to be extremely polite and extremely respectful. And when somebody is really angry, and I just kind of block them, because I don't want that energy. They're not in my segment. If I were to continue discussing with them, there's nothing good that will come out of it. For me personally, and some passerby would look at this and go, "Oh, this libertarianism is so angry," and we're not. We're the most peaceful, most tolerant, most diverse, most accepting of all the philosophies. So why should I portray subconsciously libertarianism from this anger perspective? So I just block the really strident leftists, but then they report me. I read one. They they used to have a space called "Throw Out the Trash." Throw out the trash is TOTT. And the idea there was that they would find the trash, the people who write wrong things, non-PC things, and mostly conservatives, but a number of libertarians. And then they would actively brigade against those people. And they actually had it on Quora. Now, Quora eventually shut them down. But a very popular writer for the left, I read his post just a couple of days ago, and he was giving instructions. This is what I do. Every day I open up, and I have this thing that lists all of the guys I'm going after, their edits. And that's the first thing I open, is I open every single one of these guys' edits to see if they have said anything that might be a BNBR, and then I'll report them on it. And I can recognize that, because I've had like some banter conversations with other libertarians where 6 or 7 levels down in comments, and I might and the funny thing is, I might say something disparaging about me, as in, oh, I'm so stupid about this. I get a BNBR violation for that. Even though it's way down, no one else is seeing this. It's a discussion with somebody who's a friend, and I'm disparaging myself. And I'll actually put, look, I was just joking around. It's just me, and I'll lose those.
Wow, that to me that just seems so strange. Now, I wanted to reiterate for people who are listening to this or watching this, LocoFoco Netcast people, the offensive post you made that you just recited a few minutes ago, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is it's very clear and very concise, and it shows, you might say, the transactional clarity and everything about the policies just really clearly. And I think that's really what offends them, is that they don't have anything like that. As far as I can tell, they don't do that kind of stuff. They muddy things up because they have to muddy things up. We don't have to muddy things up. We gain our power from dissecting the universe as it is, not gain our power by muddying it up and getting people to get all upset by other people, and all that's nonsense. Now, I've been, I've had a few posts suppressed and quarantined in some way, and I understand why they did it in one case, and I should come completely clean. I referred to trans women as fake women. I just don't believe that they're women. I'm not saying that they're not something. They're not human beings. They don't deserve rights. They don't even deserve respect, but they aren't women. And I think there's an important difference. But calling them fake is, a nasty way of putting it. And so, if they say that, that's okay. It doesn't bother me. But was I going to change it for them? I just let it be quarantined. It doesn't bother me because no one really cares about what I do on Quora, but they do about you because you are the nail that gets pounded down. You're the nail, the raised nail that sticks out, and they must get that down. Because my nail head is really close to the surface. on Quora?
Yeah, I actually get questions oftentimes on Quora, or I used to get when I was on Quora. I have to start saying that now. I used to get questions of, how do these people maintain their cool in political discussions? And I would be one of the people named. It'd be like 3 or 4 people, and I would be one of the people named. And then so I would give my explanation for how I do that, and that I do focus on the open and curious. And when somebody is really coming at me hard, I turn the cheek once, and then if they still come at hard at me, I just block them. I just because they're not really in my set. I'm not going to convince them. This is too hard to convince them, and I'm really looking for someone else. And I don't want to lose my cool. I don't know how much I have left to live. I don't want to live like that. And it just it goes against libertarianism, I have to say. So I allow them to be as authoritarian as they want to be, but just not on my in my comment section.
Yeah, very good. So you have downloaded all your stuff off of Quora, right?
Right. Yeah. So I have just a gigantic download of 1,600 plus answers that I saw this coming. So over 3 weeks, I just kept getting these notifications, and I couldn't stop it. And I kept on saying, I would write notes and say, look, I don't know why I'm getting these. Can someone tell me? I didn't come up until the very end that maybe their bot was picking up on the word ebook.
Okay.
That was like a very end. They all look like BNBR violations, because the text they were sending me wasn't my text. It was someone else's text, and it was stuff I would never say. I just don't talk to people like that.
Right. That's now your ebook was a fairly recent innovation. I mean, it's probably, what is it, 6 months old? Is that about right, or is it a little bit older?
Yeah, so every 2 days I would go and I would find, I have about 90 categories that I write about, that I kind of post hoc, I said, what am I writing about? And it shook out to about 90 categories. So I said, a good way for a newbie to understand what this is if I take kind of a popular, easy to read answer from each category. So you can kind of see, libertarianism isn't this one thing. It's that applied across all of these areas. And so every 2 days I would pull one out. So yeah, so I was almost done with my ebook, and as a matter of fact, I was gonna do a second one, which was not just for newbies. The first one was kind of for newbies.
Ah, okay, very good.
So it was like kind of the most popular, easiest to digest and stuff. And then I was going to go down a level, and then down a level, and get to a little bit of the harder stuff. So but I wanted something to hand people, because if they go and look you up in Quora, someone like myself, I have 1,600 answers. So what are you going to do? Just open the most recent one that's going to be on some top? There's no way that they can get introduced to this and taken through. So I was just creating a way of, look, here's this very different paradigm from how people think, and I'm going to take you through step by step what this means. And that was the idea. And it was just really kind of an aid to people who first come across this idea, who really are intellectually curious, which, sadly Quora has has a high percentage of those. I just don't know that with the brigading and just being such a minority and so outside the Overton window that we can approach. It's just very hard.
So now you are going to make an ebook, an actual ebook you can put in one place and sell on Amazon and elsewhere?
Yeah, I guess so. I was, it's so funny because if anything, I was I brought people to Quora. Right. When people would follow me, I would look, and I had a lot of people who had just joined Quora, and the first person they followed was me. So they're coming. They looked up something libertarian. They read me. They go, oh, that's interesting. They joined Quora. So I'm actually a recruiting tool for Quora for those people who are interested and curious about ideas like libertarianism. So I was fine about doing that. So now I need an alternative way of getting these ideas out. I've joined ThinkSpot, Jordan Peterson's new venture. It's in beta form. I'm over there. There's no libertarians on there whatsoever that I can find. Um, there's only one tag that's on libertarianism, and I don't see anyone else writing on there. Uh, and it's a beta version, so there's only a few thousand people, and a lot of them are not really active. So I'm hoping that I can kind of salt that mind a little bit, and maybe bring some other libertarians, and we can actually create like a little libertarian corner of ThinkSpot. Because what Jordan Peterson's idea was is that we need a place for discourse, for intellectual discourse, and a place where ideas are not censored. And that's really what's happening on Quora, is that the people who don't like these ideas are trying to censor them by gaming the system. And Quora is not protecting the very small minority that's us libertarians.
So we'll see if ThinkSpot's the spot. Do you have any idea when it's going to go live beyond beta?
No, I don't. I saw though that they just came out with a new big software. They had come out with one release, and I think that they started bringing people on in like November, December, and then they had a second software release in February. And so I'm coming in, after the second beta software. So I don't know. I will be relegated to no man's land for a while, I'm afraid. And that saddens me. I mean, I wish I could continue writing on Quora, but I don't want to lose everything that I've done. So that answer that I just gave, it's a very short answer, but it actually took me some time to make it succinct and kind of clever and parallel and boil down to the essence of it. And Quora deleted that. They didn't collapse it. They actually deleted it off the site. It's not available through my profile. I don't see it on my profile. Only if one has a direct link to it. So luckily, I keep direct links to all my material. And they've never really deleted any of my stuff before. They've deleted questions that I've done answers, and so I can't see those in my profile. But they've never actually gone and said, yeah, this is so terrible that we've got to delete this. And that's what I fear, is that all those the 10,000 plus hours of work will just be thrown away. And
so if we took your how many answers? 1,600 that you have on your ebook right now? Was that the number?
Well, 1,600 total answers. In my ebook, it's only about 80 answers, 90 answers.
Oh, very good. So
it's a very small subset.
So you could print that out as a book too. It wouldn't need to be an ebook. It could be a book.
Right. That was the idea, was that it would be. I get a lot of requests from people. Oh, geez, I wish I had this that I could give to my cousin or my uncle or my, and so I was thinking, well, there is a way of doing that. What if I actually had like the best answers? Now, I wasn't actually planning on putting that together and putting it into an ebook, but I guess I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. And now I don't know how to get hold of those people. I'm not really going to be on Quora that much, and I better not put an ad to my actual ebook, given that they don't want me to even link to the thing that says ebook on the space ebook. So,
right. But you don't have a web page otherwise either. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. So you could do a number. You have a number of ways to go here. So we'll see where you go. I want to see you do an ebook, a book, and a website. I want everything from Dennis Pratt, but and we'll see how ThinkSpot goes. It seems insane that your work would somehow all of a sudden and just like that evaporate from anyone's inquiring about libertarianism.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, the more important people, the people who have larger fan bases on YouTube and Twitter, we've seen their work disappear. But you're right, there isn't like an umbrella, source. And I've actually talked about this quite a bit. I call it Libertarian Mecca. And the idea being that there's this one place that you can go, and it's the hub of libertarianism. And you can go there and you can find all the video, all the podcasts, all the blogs, all the discussion groups, the news sources that are all in different sources of libertarian. And then you might be able to search it by tag and stuff like that. And I've actually played around with this. I'm part of the Free State Project.
Right.
And the idea of the Free State Project is, instead of being one person amongst all these authoritarians, the one libertarian, we gather all the libertarians together into one place, and they can actually be stronger. They can support each other. Well, we're doing that physically with the Free State Project, where we're all geographically converging into New Hampshire, but we're not doing that yet virtually. Where we could have a libertarian mecca somewhere, and you can find Argentinian libertarian pieces, along with Portuguese libertarian pieces, along with minarchist pieces and anarcho-capitalist pieces, and you can actually access this, and that's actually what I was doing. I had stopped a lot of my writing. I was writing about 3 or 4 things a week. Usually I wrote about once a day. But I was writing about three times a week. And what I was doing was I was building up this space, what we called Liberty at Large. And the idea there was that we would give samples of different people's writings or podcasts or videos to people who were curious. And it was really going well. When I took it over in December, we had about 700 views a day. And by the time I was kicked off, we were around 24,000. So it was more than a 30-fold increase in 3 months of viewership. And it was across all different sources and all different and the reason in Cato people can't stand the Mises people, but on my site they were all there together, because guess what? It's like this version versus that version. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
They can't play. They won't play well with each other, but in my sphere they ought to be playing well together, or at least offering their wares to people who might be liberty curious.
Yeah, it sounds good, though I must say that there is that problem of the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. And I fear if libertarians congregated one place, it would give some people just an excuse to round them up and take them somewhere else. This is a bad situation we're in right now, because the governments are taking a lot of power, and they're getting a lot of support from a lot of people to take a lot of power. And that power is not going to go away unless people really raise a cry. And it might, because I think this is going to turn out very differently. This whole coronavirus quarantine is going to turn out differently than it's been billed. What we have to hope for, I think, right now, we pathetic libertarians, we have to hope for is that the coronavirus quarantine will turn into what happened after World War I, when the United States, when Americans, and much of the world realized that much of what they were told during World War I was a lie. I don't know how much lie there is. There was a World War I and there is a coronavirus, but that doesn't mean that there weren't lies and there weren't bad policies in both cases. So we'll see if that happens. I don't know, because concentrated power that's almost unlimited is really, really, or even dispersed power in the case of the states, because the states are taking much of the power. And so I'm somewhat concerned. Let's just put it that way.
I've actually seen like videos where people are saying, the good thing about coronavirus is it's killed off libertarianism. And I'm going, really? That's the way that you see it? I mean, I see like this gigantic single point of failure over and over again, where the government tried to monopolize this, or their regulations are strangling these types of innovations. But of course, they go, we're taking charge. Well, we're removing all these constraints.
Yeah.
And now, and these companies are starting to do things. Well, we're telling those companies to start. No, they'll do it anyways. Get out of the way. And I mean, they're kind of jumping out in terms of, we're the ones who are solving this problem, when in fact, everything from what China did, right? Where China, the policies of China, and trying to hide things and jail people and kill people for reporting this stuff, right? The authoritarians are always saying, well, bad things would happen if corporations were out there. Well, could you imagine if you actually had a competitive environment and something bad was happening with one group? The other people would be saying, hey, look what's happening over here. We have the solution. And you'd have some resiliency in the system. But instead, it's all this command and control, single point of failure. I'm very concerned about the quarantine. People talk about how, it's a trade-off between the number of deaths from the disease, but they don't say trade-off from what. And they go like, it's economics, oh, I don't know what that means. Well, I think that this is actually killing off, possibly millions of people in the third world, where that wealth that was being produced is no longer produced. And there's people out there who, it's not like they're, oh, geez, I can't get yeast today at the store. It's like, I'm not eating now for 5 days, 6 days, because I have no trade whatsoever. So, I think that there's a very strong libertarian story to be told. I was actually working on a major piece that was going to be a libertarian story around this, about all the different failures and how government doesn't allow preparation for it, how it doesn't allow response for it, how it doesn't allow for resiliency in the system when there are failures. There will be failures, but you don't want a monopoly, a coercive monopoly, being the one that fails. Right. You want there to be 20 attempts and 17 of them fail, but you got 3 successes.
It all sounds very, very central planning, what they're doing. They act like central planners, and we know what happens with central plans. I mean, this is pretty obvious. We also know that central planners tend to lie, and our government, CDC, have been already caught in a major lie about masks.
Oh, right.
That's I mean, this has now been covered this last week. Many people, Paul Jacob just covered it on his site, and I've seen it in pajama media. I mean, it's just everywhere now. People are covering it. But that's just a small lie. That's just small. We don't really know how far the lies go. And there's also the weird problem of the whole rationale for the quarantine as it's being done is basically predicated on the idea of flattening the curve, right? So why are we trying to flatten the curve? Well, it's to save the current medical system from stressors. Mm-hmm. So basically we have this Jim Crack system in America. And we're now being required to sacrifice all of our freedoms so it doesn't get stressed beyond capacity. And of course, what everybody could have done is we could have just set up massive. I mean, what would you do in a free society with a contagion? Well, you would set up emergency shelters for the people with the contagion, and people would volunteer, and there would be all of a sudden there would be an efflorescence of support. And now governments could have done that. I mean, their governments do have an ability to marshal resources. And they could have saved the hospitals from this. But no, they preferred to basically end capitalism for a few months, which I think is maybe the biggest hit since communism and could be worse. I'm actually pretty negative about it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also assumes that we had capitalism before, that we had a free market before. I wrote something about certificates of needs, where a lot of these they talked about, well, we don't have enough hospital beds. Well, why? Why don't we have enough hospital beds? We don't have enough doctors. Why? Why don't we have enough doctors? It is not a free market problem. It is a problem of government.
Right.
And that's fine as long as you don't have a stress, right? They were just assuming, what we'll do is we'll give rent to the doctors, we'll give rent to the nurses, we'll give rent to the hospitals, we'll give rent, all these special interests, and in exchange we get a campaign funding, we get support, we get all these great things. But then we're at a single point of failure. We don't have that resiliency in the system. And it's funny because right before this virus hit, I was reviewing some bills up in New Hampshire for new laws, and one of the laws that they had was that that if you were in New Hampshire, you couldn't be treated by an ambulance person from Massachusetts, say, or New York or Vermont, that they couldn't cross the border, even if they were closer, right? So you're dying, right? You're dying, and because they want to give rent to the New Hampshire licensing group, right? They outlaw someone coming and saving your ass. Well, guess what? Guess one of the big problems they have now is that people can't cross these borders, and you can't get doctors over here because they're not licensed. Well, they're licensed over here. So I was really upset just from a regular, peacetime, non-pandemic situation of saying, my goodness, why would you not allow people who could actually serve to serve? Why would you instead give rent to somebody at the cost of lives? Now, I saw the lives. They don't see any lives. They go, well, they don't have the proper credentials, and we in New Hampshire really do credential our first responders much better. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it actually that bill would have cost lives. In a pandemic, that just goes up an order of magnitude. And it's like, well, we can ignore 3 or 4 deaths per year, 6 deaths a year, or 20 deaths a year. But now all of a sudden, what happens when you're ignoring 100 deaths or 200 deaths?
Yeah, this is an interesting problem. And libertarians have the issue of always having to remind everybody that we're not defending the current order. They say that, well, the free market has failed us. And we say, well, if you allowed the free market, maybe it wouldn't have failed you. And we say this over and over again, but it does come back also to Bastiat's great line, which is about the seen and the unseen. Mm-hmm. And much of what they, like our current therapeutic state overlords, who are deciding what everybody's supposed to do, and it's based on expert doctors. I mean, everybody's saying that you've got to listen to the doctors, which is insane in its own way, because doctors are only concerned about one way of looking at the world. Mm-hmm. So they don't see the unseen part of, okay, if you shut down trade for a month or 2 or 3, that thousands, millions of people couldn't die or be very, very sick for other reasons. They just don't see it because they're not in the business of seeing that part of the world. All they are is in the business of seeing this problem right now, because that's what they're hired for. But to actually listen to them and, heed their word as far as a prescription for all of society to save an existing medical structure that was wobbly from the beginning, this all seems very much nuts to me. And it does come back down to the seen and the unseen. Everybody points to what they see, and they extrapolate everything from this limited data set. And we constantly have to remind everybody about the wider data sets, some of which is not even viewable in a normal way, because it's opportunity cost, it just gets very, very complicated. And that's why we have economics, that's why there's social science, and that's why there's liberty. Because liberty is a good way of actually getting people to sort of automatically adjust to more than one factor, even if they're not aware of all the factors they're adjusting to.
Yeah, I mean, and we see it with such terms as essential services and essential products, which is a command and control centralized thing. As in, I know, I being the ruler, I as the ruler know what is essential and what is non-essential. And we have the iPencil example, right, where that there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of interactions that go into making some pencil, and that those are constantly shifting in unknowable ways. You couldn't possibly organize that from a central command and control perspective. So here they say, well, obviously ventilators are essential. But what about the gasket that goes into this one particular part? Oh, well, that's not essential. Well, guess what? You don't get at the end of the product line, And they don't understand that all those things come together in this mosaic dance. And so they're thinking, I think we in this room can decide what's essential. Well, no, you cannot. What you need is 300 million people to decide what is essential. I mean, that's what they did with the early test kits, right? the CDC wanted the test kits, and they were going to make sure that they were well done and certified and all this type of stuff. And the test kits sucked. They didn't work. And the people in Washington said, well, we can test it here. And oh no, you're not allowed to test. You're not allowed to test. Only go from our test. You're not certified to test. And they actually broke the law. So these doctors and
that was in Seattle, the King County area, right, of Washington State. You're talking about that. Yeah, that was an interesting moment in the whole debacle that is unfolding before us. This is an amazing time, in part because they think that they have the upper hand. Well, they do in one sense, but that they have a better argument because everybody is obeying them right now. But I do think that it's going to maybe change when people realize that the disasters of what's been caused. And I hope that we can survive it nicely. Because, something like this could actually destroy a civilization. Yeah. Civilizations have been destroyed from things like this. And it's not as if our civilization can't be destroyed from within, like, all the great minds of the past said. It will be destroyed from within, not from without. So it's an interesting experiment that these people are doing without them knowing that it's an experiment. But it's been very entertaining in its own bizarre little way.
Well, I actually thought that was a good opportunity for us to kind of get our story out and share it. And, I'm a little bit depressed that I cannot get my story out anymore. So I want to thank you for bringing me on just to talk about my expulsion from Quora.
It's an amazing thing that they did that, but in other ways, we've seen it been happening in social media all around the internet. Leftists preach the gospel of inclusion, but they're the ones who exclude, and this irony is somehow lost on them. And for me, this is especially rich because I came to libertarian ideas with a few problems that I needed to solve. One of them was in-group, out-group antagonism. Mm-hmm. From probably age 10 on, I was kind of obsessed with the problem of in-group, out-group antagonism. And as I came to see it, these ideas of individualism and liberty were a solution to a problem. And left and right aren't solutions to that problem. They're the problem, is that, relentless pursuit of inclusion and to exclude others, and then the other relentless pursuit of taking the excluded and bringing them in. And that's kind of right and left right there, is that it's a problem, and we have a solution, and they don't see it. So I get to watch it happening over and over again, and and it's interesting to see it happen in the voluntary sector of the social media, and it's an interesting challenge to us, because we always say that it's a private organization; they can have whatever rules they want, and they'll have to bear with the consequences, and they will bear with the consequences, and they aren't going to be. Quora may actually lose because of what they're doing to you and others. I mean, it's possible that this is one little step they're taking onto away from the very mission statement that Quora had.
It was a very interesting, very unique perspective where they were going to be the kind of the intellectual place. And I suspect that they'll eventually just become kind of a leftist mouthpiece with kittens. Pictures of kittens. They'll go down the Facebook direction. So there won't be that open discourse. That's why I think that ThinkSpot might actually do well. I have a story for you, by the way. We belong to the Unitarian Church here in Massachusetts, and I was kind of one of the leaders, and they put me in terms of their. I don't know what they called it, but we called it social justice. But how can we have greater peace, and how can we bring this out into the community? And I did a survey, and basically what the people in the church said was that we want greater diversity. So I designed a full year program with readings and concerts and meetings with different people and stuff like that. And I knew that I started getting into trouble pretty early on because people would say, we'd read a story, and it was always kind of this leftist social justice of, these people are the good people and these people are the bad people. And I was like going, but okay, so let's expand our thinking here. But it was like, we're the good people and those people are bad. And one of the books we read was I think it's Alston, Prejudice.
Jane Austen?
Yeah, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Are you talking about Pride and Prejudice, or are you talking about something else?
No, no, no. I'm talking about. I'll have to link to it. I don't remember the title of it, but it was on Martin Luther King's bookshelves. It was on Malcolm X's bookshelves. And what it did was in the 50s, he basically went across and looked at in-group, out-groups. Yeah, and in every single society, and kind of came up with the core reasons for that and how it's done and stuff like that. And that was one of our assignments. And the point was never getting across that this is how humans interact a lot, and we have to be careful about it, even if we think of ourselves as super tolerant. And so about halfway through my program, the president of the congregation got up and said, I really want to thank Dennis for the program that he's done. It's been so great. And we've just had this many lesbians join us, and this many gays join us, and this many and that shows how diverse we're becoming. Well, our congregation was heavily gay, lesbian already, and so I got up and I said, look, we won't be an inclusive society. We won't be an inclusive community until a rich, white, able-bodied, heterosexual, Southern Catholic, rich man walks through that door and he feels welcome. And she looked at me, and this wasn't even a joke. She said, "Why would we ever want someone like that here?" And I was just like, "Holy cow!" Because it's okay to be prejudiced and intolerant against those people. And here the president of the congregation was saying, we don't want that person. As part of the, let's be inclusive, let's accept diversity. She would say, no, we don't want people who are, Catholics. We don't want people who are Southerners. We don't want that type of person. And it's that type of intolerance. I was surprised because I wrote that up on Quora. It's actually one of my more popular pieces. And I got a lot of comments back from the left that said, oh, no. I guess there's a famous article about how we cannot tolerate the intolerable.
Are we talking about the toleration paradox of Karl Popper?
Yes. And they use that as justification, that their hatred is actually, they have to have that hatred because those people are intolerant, and so therefore they must be intolerant. And they just totally ignore that there's this system that we humans do, whatever society, where we kind of are intolerant against these people and we tolerate these people, and that's the out group, and that's how we define ourselves. And I think it's hard because libertarians don't say you have to accept everybody, but we say, well, you don't have to beat up on everybody. If you look at the Unitarian history, it's a very libertarian group. And and it was one of the bulwarks of the anti-slavery movement, and you read their statement of principles, and it's a libertarian statement of principles. It's just that it's been kind of taken over where, okay, the government's been used to whomp on these people. Well, now instead of taking the government off, what the libertarians say was, well, let's take the government out of this. Right? Let's stop whomping on anyone. Let's take the government out and let's start treating people as people, right? Instead, it's like, oh no, well now the idea is that we're going to take the government and we would have, part of every single service would be, okay, here's what the government's doing and here's what we need to do to organize to try to take it. Now what we have to do is we have to take the government power and use it to whomp on those guys, because it's not the whomping that's the problem. It's that we're not whomping on the right people.
Right.
And it's that problem, where there was this like point of inflection where they could have almost been libertarian if they hadn't gone for the ring. But they went for the ring. They said, if I possess the ring, I will whomp on the right people and I'll protect the people who are being whomped. It's like, no, stop the whomping.
It's kind of sad too. Because you see all these people who have some great moral ideas. I mean, I remember in the 90s, Bill Clinton talking about the importance of dealing with the other. self and other. This is the ultimate moral problems in Martin Buber's I and Thou. This was the major issue, is that you have to in some way treat the other as an end in itself at some level, that the other must not be completely othered. And I was excited about this. I thought, oh, is there any hope for Bill Clinton? Well, no, the whole culture followed that logic to this weird place we have in leftism now. And it's not weird. It's the traditional tribalism inverted in a peculiar little way.
I look back on the 60s and 70s and kind of the left background that I had, and it was definitely one of feeling oppressed by authority, that the authority was used to hurt us. And could they just get off our backs? Allow us to be. We want to be able to sell these T-shirts, and they're telling us we can't sell them. How? Get out. Why would they be able to tell us that? It was and that spread across everything. And now that they actually are the ones who are holding the power, they don't see that oppression. To them, it's not oppression because it's they who are doing it. And they know for a fact that they are good guys because that's their story.
Yeah, sure. When I used to live in a town that's very that had three separate populations: the old town, the old people, the old townies, the old culture, just normal people; the military retiree culture, a lot of retirees that came in, and then there was the hippie culture. And we didn't call it hippie in the 80s and 90s, but it was basically a lefty granola crunchy kind of. I liked them. That's the people I got along with the best. But one of the things I noticed pretty fast was that once they got in power, their preference for freedom kind of went out the door. This is a thing over and over again. Power corrupts, and people who talked about freedom when they're out of power sometimes don't talk about it or don't implement it when they get in. I know we've all probably noticed this problem, and that was obviously a problem there, because they began wanting to prescribe for the whole of the town how the town should look and behave according to their values. And that's one of the reasons I get very annoyed by the talk of values in our society, because we all have values, and that's not the problem. Our values, our ideals, our aesthetics, our morals. It's really the principles that we have to interrelate that matter, just like you say. I mean, this is ethics, and it's something more than values. I think it's principles. It's rules. It's not hitting each other over the head. It's not starting the fight.
Yeah. Well, and the collectivist idea is, well, we have to act together to do good things. And the we is you have to obey me, and the good thing is what I see. Right? I was talking to a philosophy professor yesterday, and he was arguing for nihilism. He was saying there's no such thing as human rights. He was saying that that ethics that we as a society decide what rights are. I.e., the government is what gives us our rights and protects our rights. And he kept on talking about that, what we had talked about before, which is that communitarianism requires authoritarianism to get everybody on the right path, right? And the right path is, according to him, is what his values are, right? We should do these things, and to the extent that we don't do those things, that's freedom poorly applied. And to the extent to which I'm in power and I force these things, that's really good freedom. And it's just such a weird way of seeing it, especially from a libertarian perspective, because we actually see that people will want different outcomes and different goals. And, sure, you may not be excited about my charity, but you'll have your own charities, and you'll support these other groups of people whom I just might not see. I might not understand the problem that the way that you see it, and you actually are addressing an important thing that I just wouldn't, I wouldn't be aware of. But I think I'm pure as snow because I'm addressing these other problems.
Well, it's sad to see you go from Quora, and but I hope to see a lot more. Actually, I want to see everything Dennis Pratt, But I did want to ask for absolution. I didn't cause anything. When I put you on the top libertarian on Quora, and then a week later or so you get kicked off of Quora, I began to wonder, okay, what did I just do? Because once again, the raised nail gets hammered down, and I was just wondering, did I just focus on that nail too much?
Well, you look back on that conversation, and it was nothing but complimentary to Quora. And I can't imagine that you could be in management of Quora and come away from that conversation going, okay, that's our positioning. That should be our positioning. Now, to come out of that, and a week later or 2 weeks later, to actually go totally against that positioning, to shut down real intellectual discourse. I think it's, I'm just so surprised that would be their decision. And I don't know that they're making that decision consciously. I think that these decisions are being made at such a low level of the social justice warrior getting out of university. They get their first job, and they become a moderator for Quora, and then they get a BNBR, and they look and they go, oh my God, I can't believe that this libertarian is saying these things, which I know are wrong because my philosophy teacher told me that they were wrong, because the obvious truth is collectivism from authoritarian perspective. So they're just so biased against it. And unfortunately, there is no, the people who started Quora, I think that they actually had a fantastic idea. It's not what they're implementing now, and it's going to get worse and worse as more people are coming out of the universities that is just teaching authoritarianism. I mean, I don't see any break there.
Yeah, now, of course they don't call it authoritarianism. They have other names for it, but that must annoy them when they hear that we call them authoritarians. That must.
Dude, no, and I say, look, all that means is that there's a person that has a greater ownership of your body than you do. That can tell you what you may ingest and not ingest, or inhale and not inhale. I would actually prefer calling it slavery, that it's a form of slavery, right? That you do not own your body, but some authority does. And of course, they, being from the left, they believe that whole democracy thing, that we are free if we can vote on things. And I don't see much difference at having an autocrat, a slave master telling you what to do, than having 100,000 people telling you what to do, and you having 1/100,000th of a vote about what you can do. It's okay. So you have 1/100,000. That's a little bit better than zero.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Not much.
Now we're back to the tale of the slave again from Anarchy, State, and Utopia, or Man versus the State. I don't know who the owners of Quora are. Who started it? I don't know those people. I don't remember who they are. I mean, we all heard of who owns Twitter and started Twitter, right?
That's Jonathan Brill is somebody who's pretty high up there, I think. And
I just don't remember. But one of the rules that when you said that they had good ideas to start with, one of the rules that we do know from, for instance, foundations, is that no matter what the original donor, the original benefactor of a foundation is, the next generation will take it out in a different direction. There was actually a book written by a libertarian on this subject. I forget his name. He used to write for The Atlantic. And this is an interesting and important problem for foundations. If you want to set up if you want to bequeath a fortune to some outfit to do your will in the future, well, it's going to be taken over. And so far, it's almost always taken over by leftists. And so that happens in companies too, is that they get taken over by leftists. So I think in a sense what we see here is a form of parasitism. Leftism is parasitism. I'll repeat that. Leftism is parasitism. And that's actually what we believe, because parasitism is part of their prescription for society, is that we must take from many or some and give to others. We have to feed off of people without their consent. That's parasitism. And they are themselves parasites to the institutions that others create. And that's why things get bad in these institutions. So maybe in the future, people who make these institutions should find ways of getting around that problem. That it should be somehow resistant to parasites.
Yeah, I think Mises had a lawsuit where there was a large donation made to a couple of colleges for Austrian economics chairs. and these chairs were given to Keynesians who had no relationship whatsoever to Austrians. I don't know what the outcome was of the suit, but the lawsuit was that no, you've totally gone against what the bequeath was.
Yeah, and I believe the original stipulation was that if you do this, the money goes to you, that is set up these chairs for the promotion of Austrian economics. But if you don't do this, it goes to the Mises Institute or whatever the organization was. I think it was the Mises Institute, like you say. And I'm pretty sure that it's been settled, and I'm pretty sure that the Mises Institute got half of the money. And I think I'm pretty sure that's how it went. I remember reading about it at the time. It's an interesting story, and it was a flagrant violation of the bequeathment. I mean, you could tell just by looking at what they did that it was fraud to take, that they were actually, it was a breach of contract or whatever the rule is in law when you disobey an accepting of a fortune on conditions. They just didn't, they had no intention, not one intention of implementing it. And then when they tried later on to pretend to implement it, it got funny. Do you remember the funny part? Well, we're beyond, in our society at large, I think we're beyond the funny part. So, and that's maybe one of the reasons the left is crazy, a little bit has gone crazy, is that they realize, well, they've always been, never been more than a third of the population, the left mindset. And now they realize that the rest of the population is becoming to look a little more askance at what's going on in their ranks. They begin to see the craziness. I mean, all the PC stuff, that stuff that's obviously nonsense. But the problem is now we have a coronavirus quarantine, and lots of people are getting in on the authoritarian act.
Yep. And the authoritarian act is seen as the thing that's saving us. And I'm going, I don't think you're paying attention. I don't think you're paying attention.
Well, it's always about where our attention is pointed. I mean, that's what propaganda is all about, and that's what people who have rhetoric do, is that you point to the area that makes your case look best. You don't point to reality, because reality can't be pointed at, except in metaphysics, I guess. So it's always about pointing, and we just have to point out, we are always pointing out the things that everybody else is missing. Often the unseen.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much, and I really look forward to your next endeavor.
Well, I have to say I've been kind of a loss, because my day is so structured around writing and around building things on Quora, and to not have that, and to know that I really can't get back to it, because I would be on tenterhooks the entire time, and I don't know how much life I have left. I just don't want to. I don't want to lose it all. I don't want to lose whatever is remainder. Just because some pimply face, just grad, can't understand the point that we're making. It's just too alien to him. I mean, it's not a terrible point. It's, peace, love, and understanding. Come on, guys. This should be easy, but they cannot understand it. They've been so turned away from it. So it's sad, and I hope that there's a way of me finding a new home.
Okay. Well, me too. I want the books. Okay. Talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye. Well, the music has started playing, and you'd think the podcast would be over, but we have a few bits of cleanup to do. First, Dennis had mentioned a book, which I had thought he was talking about Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and I was so very, very wrong. What he was talking about was Gordon Allport's The Nature of Prejudice. How could I have ever thought different? Also, Dennis and I recorded this on Monday, and by the end of the week, he had been let back on Quora. And then his second answer was suppressed. And I think we know why. Quora has this rule about not putting up memes, by which they mean any images with words on them. But Dennis had put up a very good and helpful equation up in an image form about death rate equals death rates from coronavirus over total coronavirus infected, and that was just, somebody objected and they got him kicked down. It's not so much kicked off or kicked down or suppressed, it's they just hide the answer because you've done something wrong. These social media outfits are so weird. Anyway, we'll see how long Dennis lasts on Quora, and we'll see if Quora grows up. I kind of doubt that Dennis will last long, and I kind of doubt that Quora will grow up. So, let's call this the end of the podcast. This has been the 7th episode of the LocoFoco Netcast. My name is Timothy Virkkala. You can find me at Workman. That's Workman with an I, not an O, on social media, and at workman.com. Talk to you next time.